Ladies and gentlemen, cryptocurrency investors and enthusiasts, today I'm sharing with you one of the most prevalent and clever exploits that hackers are using to steal crypto from both crypto beginners and seasoned crypto investors alike. But better yet, I will teach you how to protect yourself from this nasty exploit in your own crypto journey. This particular video is one that I implore you to watch till the very end, because this next 10 to 15 minutes could save you from losing precious crypto and dealing with the headache that ensues. So if you like crypto, if you invest in crypto, and you want to get free educational content that makes you a better crypto investor, please do subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you get a heads up when I post new videos like this every single week. Now in the intro, I alluded to an exploit that hackers are using to pry away significant amounts of crypto from both brand new crypto investors and those who've been in the space for a long time. Equally, in fact, I've seen people losing hundreds of thousands of dollars to this exact exploit. And simply put, hackers and scammers are using the ubiquitous approval functionality that's built into various token smart contracts on Ethereum and Ethereum virtual machine based networks like Polygon to trick you into signing a transaction that lets them steal your tokens right from under your nose. This approval functionality is what lets services in DeFi, like decentralized exchanges and lending protocols, or NFT marketplaces like OpenSea, manage your assets for you with ERC20 tokens and ERC721 tokens, respectively, so they can send them on your behalf. To give you an example of why this approved feature exists, let's think about the ERC20 token standard, which dictates standard functionality that a fungible token smart contract must have. The approval functionality in the fungible token contract standard ERC20 is intended to allow other smart contracts, like those that underpin and operate common DeFi platforms like Uniswap or Aave, for example, to spend your tokens on your behalf. You know, when you go into Uniswap and you go to swap a new token for the very first time, that you have to approve that token to be used by the Uniswap router smart contract that facilitates your swap? You probably remember this if you've used this platform. When you do this, you're literally giving Uniswap's core smart contract the ability to spend your funds up to an approved limit. So when you make swaps, it can do it for you. So let me give you an example. Let's say you want to swap your ERC20 token USDC to get ETH in return, but you've never swapped USDC on Uniswap before. So when you go to make that swap, Uniswap is going to ask you to sign a transaction, which calls the approve function on the ERC20 token contract that USDC is implemented in. You pass in the address of the Uniswap router smart contract as the delegate that can spend your funds on your behalf, and a positive integer value for how many tokens you wish to approve for that delegate. Now, I know people get all freaked out when I show code here, but this is how simple the code really is. The ERC20 contract simply keeps a list of contract addresses and amounts that you, denoted by MSG or message.sender, have approved to spend your tokens, and then publishes an event using the emit method to basically notify the app you've approved that the approval is done and ready to go. Once the approval is complete, the delegate smart contract that was given approval in the approved step can now call the transfer from function on that ERC20 contract and actually spend the funds that were approved. In other words, change the owner of that token. Now, in the context of this example, let me explain where things can go very, very wrong. At face value, it might seem innocuous to give this permission to an app like Uniswap because it's a trusted application, right? Everyone uses Uniswap. Well, that is true. But do you realize how many fake Uniswap websites there are that look and feel just like Uniswap? One single interface looks just like Uniswap. Well, guess what happens when an unsuspecting user goes onto a Uniswap clone, a phishing site, and signs an approval transaction for that fake Uniswap and its subsequent fake smart contract behind the scenes to then spend their funds on their behalf? And you've probably guessed by now, that user has now unwittingly signed a transaction that lets a hacker's own custom smart contract drain that user's USDC. If we're continuing with the previous example, boom, poof, funds are gone. And to make matters worse, most people do not even know how to check the approval function, or don't know to check the approval function to see how many tokens they're approving for use before they sign the transaction. Very often, wallets or apps will default to giving unlimited approval, which is absolutely insane to me, letting a third-party contract manage every single token in your balance for that token contract. And this attack vector is particularly nasty because it can be exploited even if you have a hardware wallet. Why? Because you're signing a transaction to allow the hacker to steal from you. If you sign a transaction, that hardware wallet's not going to protect you because all it does is keep your private key safe during storage and signing operations. So if you're approving it to sign something, it doesn't know the difference. Now at this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, yeah, this is bad. I get it. I've never thought about this before, and I use Uniswap and other DeFi apps that make me approve for tokens all the time. What do I do? So let me teach you how to both protect yourself from this in the future when approving new tokens, and as well how to revoke approvals in the past that might come back to bite you later. First, let me teach you how to practice good hygiene when approving tokens for use on any website and for any type of token, okay? Remember, NFTs are tokens too, by the way, so the same rules apply, not just for fungible tokens like USDC or UNI. Just keep that in mind. The absolute basic check that you must make before signing one single transaction on a web application is to first be sure without a shadow of a doubt that you are on the official web interface for whatever app you're trying to use. For example, when going to Uniswap, making sure you're using app.uniswap.org. Better yet, once you've used an app once and you've confirmed it to be legitimate, bookmark it. So you don't have to search for it again, because every time you search for it and you're in a rush, you're prone to making a mistake. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen a fake Uniswap or a fake lending platform show up in Google search and scamming people. So always get in the habit of checking to make sure you're not on a phishing site, first and foremost. Furthermore, you also have to be careful about malicious projects, which will get you to approve a token deposit for some reward. And really, it's just a scam that's stealing from you. A great example of this was the Unicats saga, which promised tokens in return for deposited UNI with unlimited approval, right? You had to approve unlimited. And needless to say, that project took everyone's UNI because it had approved all of their UNI to be spent. Moral of the story, be careful where you approve and how much you approve, okay? Now, once you're sure you're not on a phishing site, you're not on a scam project page, we can get into the business of approving tokens. Now, I can't show you visually every single wallet that's out there, so I'll just use the most common way, and that is with MetaMask. But the principles are the same regardless of what wallet you're using, so this is all you really need. When you trigger the approval of a token, you're going to get a transaction pop-up that looks just like this on the screen. I get it. You want to swap now, you want to FOMO into the next hot altcoin and just hit approve. But please don't. Just don't. We need to check two major details. First, we need to check the contract address that you're approving to spend your funds as a delegate, which is understandably a pretty important detail, right? And two, we need to check how many tokens you're approving that contract to manage. And you might remember this from the ERC20 smart contract example I showed you earlier. Now, you can check these approval details one of two ways. You can go to Edit Permissions at the very top of MetaMask here, this transaction pop-up, and check the contract address and amount and modify as needed. Or you can scroll down and you can click Transaction Details. It's basically a drop-down view. The terminology's changed over the years to see this basically uglier version of the same information, which kind of jumbles the contract address and the hexadecimal representation of the token amount to be approved in one box. Either way you want to do it is fine as long as you know how to read it. First and foremost, we need to make sure that this smart contract that you're approving as a delegate is legit. And this is actually pretty easy to do. Simply copy the contract address in your transaction pop-up window here using the copy button if you're under the Edit Permissions view, or by highlighting the address and hitting Control or Command C if you're in the full transaction details view. With that address in your clipboard, you can do two quick checks. You can go to etherscan.io and paste that contract address in to look for red flags. For example, if the contract was created days or weeks ago, but you're using Uniswap, which has been around for years, it's probably not a legitimate contract. Uniswap wasn't born yesterday. You might also see very low volume on the contract in the transaction list at the bottom of this page, which for a popular decentralized exchange like Uniswap is frankly very unlikely. You're going to have lots of volume. So there are two big ones, but there are others. You should also do a check as to whether this contract address is listed in the official documentation or website for the decentralized application you're trying to use. So to continue with the Uniswap example, you can very easily see that in their public verified GitHub repository, the contract address I copied matches the core router contract in their list here in their repository. And this info is also available on Etherscan. So if the contract you search for in the first check is the legit contract, odds are you're going to see a little green box denoting that it's the verified Uniswap contract or whatever contract you're looking for, okay? So here are some general tips to solving this, but everyone's approach is going to vary. This will give you that much more confidence that you're not approving some random malicious contract to literally steal from you with your permission. And this brings me to the second big check, which is more important in some ways than the check for your contract. Because even if it's a legit contract, you need to check the approval amount. That is how many tokens that you are approving to be managed. If you're on the edit permissions view on MetaMask, you can see a number view of how many tokens you're approving. And in the full transaction details view, you can see the hexadecimal version of that number, basically a computer-friendly version of that number that Ethereum's virtual machine uses. But I digress. Checking the edit permissions view approval limit is pretty self-explanatory. If it says unlimited, that's bad, okay? For the hexadecimal view, it's a little less clear, but it's actually easy to figure out if you remember this rule of thumb. If you see a bunch of Fs here, like lowercase f's, that's bad, okay? Why? Because the hexadecimal input of 64 Fs equates to the max allowable token amount in approval. In other words, you're approving unlimited tokens to be managed. No thanks. There are seldom times where I would ever say or recommend that you approve unlimited. Seldom times. I recommend just not doing it. You can always change this later if needed, so don't worry about it. But what do you do if you see that you're approving unlimited and you want to change it? Simply go to that edit permissions area of the MetaMask window, and in that little text box, enter the amount you wish to approve. The amount you choose is going to vary depending on your own situation, but I'd recommend only approving what you need to facilitate the transaction that you are trying to make with a little bit of headroom. So if you're trying to make a swap for, say, 1,000 USDC to Ether, just approve that 1,000 USDC, or maybe a little bit over, like 1,100. What you're sacrificing here is user experience for security, because if you want to swap more later, you need to approve more, which means you need to make another transaction to do so. Because of this, some that are sensitive to gas prices might approve, say, 5,000 USDC so they can make other swaps later. But these are just examples, okay? You have to pick what works best for you and your risk tolerance and how much you value user experience and convenience over risk, okay? So just try not to use unlimited approval. One final note here as well, if you're on some new DeFi project that's not well known, you should be very conservative about approving tokens on it. I get you want to find new stuff early, you want to be pioneering, but there's a lot of risk if you approve tokens for a contract that either you haven't audited yourself or that hasn't been audited by a third party. So please be careful when you're approving on a brand new DeFi project. That is how rug pulls happen in many times. The reason this affects so many people, both new and experienced, is because it not only exploits a commonly used functionality in the world of decentralized finance or DeFi, NFTs, and more, but it also exploits human nature. We're all in a rush. We don't read terms and conditions. We don't check our transactions. However, to protect yourself from this, you must slow down and check your transactions and follow the best practices in this video. Whether you're simply trying to determine if you're on a phishing site, or you're entering into a rug pull, or you're just trying to minimize the amount of funds you're approving to be spent on your behalf, you will be much safer in crypto if you do this due diligence before signing that transaction. And one caveat I will note is that even following these steps will not always stop you from getting caught in a scam. If you approve any tokens on a project that rug pulls, you can and probably will lose those tokens. However, if you use good approval hygiene and you only approve small amounts, you will limit the damage that a rug pull project can cause to your portfolio because you have put a max cap there on how much they can take. Just a note, by the way, if you've already approved tokens somewhere and you want to revoke those, there's a tool on Etherscan, which I'll link below, to help you get rid of those, revoke that access to the approval and then reapprove later for less, okay? So if you want more tips and information about how to protect yourself from common scams and hacks, check out these other videos that I have on this topic. But most of all, Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was informative and helpful, and I hope you stay safe out there in the world of crypto. Until next time, cheers.